of your order. Shua is coming up to light our chalice. This chalice burns for those who seek and defend the right to a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, so that each person may live according to conscience in a democratically elected society. May we tend this fire always, ever vigilant and courageous in the struggle for freedom and justice for all. Our opening words are by our minister, Reverend Kathy Hurt.
Morning. I know I said goodbye to many of you last Sunday, so you may be surprised that I'm popping up in your midst again. But I had promised to do this service. The Sunday around July 4th can be hard for your religious services committee to fill. And I also like this Sunday because it brings the interesting challenge of doing a service about politics and religion. So, hence my return to be with you on a recording this morning. I hope you had a good July 4th yesterday, whether you spent it with hot dogs and fireworks or somewhere cool and far away from hot dogs and fireworks. So I hope it's been a good holiday weekend for you. The opening words are adapted from Linda Hart. Every day is a new start, or so we want to believe. And we don't know, we cannot anticipate where we will go, what will happen, what delights await us, what heartbreaks will tear at us, what paths will open before us. We do know for sure that ours is in the going, the finding, what is on the path, and then in giving and creating what we can with that. We come here this morning amidst the discoveries and delights, the worries and the woes, to find a connection, to pause on the journey, to renew our hopes.
Please stand as you're able for our first hymn. It is number 100 in the gray hymnal. I've got Peace Like a River, or the words will be projected. the kids will come up. It's the time for all ages.
Anyone young and young at heart is welcome to come up here. I won't tell you when you have to grow up. That's not up to me. So, yesterday, if you didn't know, was 4th of July. They called America's birthday, and this was the 250th. Lots of fireworks, flags, cookouts, or as Kathy said, maybe something a little cooler. It was hot. So I have a question for you. What do you think it means to love our country? What do you think it means to love America? We'll go down the line.
To love what the people did to make a great country.
Love that. What about you?
To feel the need to better our country.
What do you think, Lorelai? Got an answer?
Learn about the history behind it.
Learn about the history behind it. Does anybody else want to guess? What do you think it is to love our country? This is a time for all ages. Anybody want the microphone? No? All right. I understand it's kind of a hard thing to answer, isn't it? I think it means a lot of things to a lot of people. To remember those who paid the price. Thank you, Denny. So those are all, I think, pretty good answers. And I think we could probably, if we thought, think up a few more. But here's something cool. Loving a country is kind of like loving a person. You can love someone because of who they are, but you can also love them because who you know that they can be. Those are often the same thing, but they're often different too. America started as an experiment. Nobody knew if it would work. In fact, a lot of democracies had failed. People came to America from all sorts of different places, spoke different languages, prayed in different ways, or didn't pray at all. And the wild idea that they had was, what if all those different people could build one country together? Nobody could tell you what religion you had to be, what you had to think. That was brand new at the time. The experiment isn't even finished. It's still running. We are a part of that. You know, when people sailed to America, my great-great-grandfather included, often the very first thing they saw was a giant green statue of a woman holding a torch, almost like our chalice up here. And at her feet, there's a poem that some of you might have heard. And this is what America, what we chose to say to the first thing to these people coming in. It goes like this: give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shores. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. Incredible, right? So maybe loving America could mean being like that lamp, keeping the door open, making room at the table, welcoming the tired and the ones still looking for a home. That is the experiment. And it needs all of us more than ever. May it be so, and amen.
The sharing of joys, milestones, and concerns is a tradition in our fellowship. All are welcome to come up, drop a glass pebble into the bowl of water, either silently or while speaking a few words into the microphone. We respectfully ask that you limit your remarks to just a sentence or two, leaving time for all who wish to share. This is a sacred time for us. Reverend Kathy has our meditation. After our song of dedication, the greeters will take up the offering. Generosity is a spiritual practice. Our fellowship is supported by our pledges and donations. If you're paying your pledge with a check, please make a note of that on the memo line. Our Share the Plate tradition splits equally all cash and unmarked checks with a local charity. For the month of July, our Share the Plate partner is our own UUFEC Food Pantry, our little free pantry out front. Bill and Kathy White keep it stocked year-round, and our donations help to make this possible. Please be generous. And I also will say a word about the offertory song before we all get started. It is called Ode to Peace, and an ode, Cecile has informed me, is a poem or hymn. And this is also, here's your new vocabulary word for the day, a quodlibet, which means two songs or two verses with different words sung at the same time. So you'll see why that's important. Our perspective today is by Reverend Kathy, The Politics of Religion and the Religion of Politics.
The Southern Baptist Church of my childhood, like our own Unitarian Universalist congregation, has always been opposed to the mixing of politics and religion, standing firmly on the principle of the essential separation of church and state. While that same variety of Baptist church has in the past several years strayed over the church-state boundary from time to time, those boundary violations are more often the result of particular personalities than any change in the church position. Baptists, Unitarian Universalists, and most mainline churches in this country have usually adhered to a clear separation of church and state, sometimes because of principles, and sometimes just to ensure the church tax-exempt position is not compromised. That has meant that political candidates do not get endorsed on Sunday mornings or in any church gatherings. Because this had been such a standard in the churches I grew up in, I have a vivid memory of the one time I saw a Baptist minister break from that standard. The event came on the Sunday preceding a Tuesday election day when the presidency was on the ballot. Our minister was careful in his remarks not to mention either candidate by name, but we all knew who he was talking about when he made reference to the fact that one candidate was a Roman Catholic. He quickly followed that reference by clarifying that he would not be telling us who to vote for, since such electioneering was prohibited. Instead, what he urged us to consider were the enormous consequences that would befall us if a Catholic were to assume the office of the presidency. We all knew well the problematic elements of Catholicism from a Baptist perspective, since we heard about them frequently on Sunday mornings. The worship of Mary and statues, the weird assertion that the communion wafer and wine were the literal body and blood of Jesus. But having a Catholic president would be a whole new ball of wax, as it introduced the issue of the Pope. Our minister reminded us that Catholics were required to maintain a primary allegiance to the Pope, and that meant that America, under Catholic leadership, would no longer be a free nation. Instead, we would be one nation under the Pope, with a president who checked with Rome before taking any action. So the minister sent us forth to ponder this dire possibility in the days remaining before the election and to ask God's guidance when we marked our ballots. Though I was in grade school at the time, I had seen enough of the news to be skeptical of the minister's warning. I thought that Catholic president looked pretty good in the news clips with his cute children and a pretty wife. Our school teacher had told us that he was a war hero who wrote a good book that we should read. By contrast, the other candidate looked, to me, kind of creepy, always sweaty and fidgeting as though he were about to be caught doing something wrong. I will say the prospect of a Catholic nation did sound alarming to me, since it had the potential to require us to eat more fish sticks and go to church every day like the Catholics did. The notion of John Kennedy as some sort of Vatican operative sounds silly now, the product of small town Bible Belt thinking. Yet how far we have come from a time when candidates usually tried to set aside their personal religious preferences to now when religion and politics seem inextricable. When a candidate who does not talk forthrightly about their religious beliefs is criticized, when religious leaders are courted with the expectation that they will deliver their entire denominations, when particular moral issues that church churches take stances on are the litmus test for a candidate, when some parts of the voting populace expect political leaders to strengthen America's supposedly Christian identity. The fear of too much religion entering politics has been transformed into almost a fear of politics without religion. And ministers who once might have avoided mention of any candidates, not so much on principle, but to avoid IRS scrutiny, in each election cycle urge their colleagues to protest that separation of church and state, and urge their church members to weigh the religious beliefs of candidates and to vote only for those candidates whose religious beliefs match their own. Politics and religion actually make quite compatible bedfellows, which may be why the notion of separating them first arose and why it continues to be hard to keep them apart. If you're a member of the in religious group, then having friends in high government places or even having the government itself be supportive of you can be a pretty nice setup. I mean, honestly, would we not be over the moon with delight if we had the chance to put a Unitarian Universalist candidate in the White House or even in the Florida governor's mansion? Because would that not mean we could look forward to seeing all sorts of actions taken that we believe are good and necessary? Of course, if you're a member of the out religious group, position we Unitarian Universalists have found ourselves occupying more often than not, then a government allied with the church sounds oppressive. Perhaps because many of the founders of this nation had the experience of being members of an unpopular religious group, they became concerned with setting up a new government that would be prohibited from befriending any and all religious groups. But the seductive interaction remains, waxing and waning in strength depending upon what particular religious group and what political leaders are doing the seducing. In 1960, Catholicism was a suspect church in this predominantly Protestant nation, with the possibility of a Catholic presidency looming. Then Protestants like my Baptist minister rallied to shore up the boundaries between church and state, lest they find themselves in the out group. These days, fundamentalist varieties of Christianity, including some Protestants and some Catholics, seize opportunities to merge seamlessly with selected politicians and get in on some of the leadership power. So I find myself imagining now that my Texas Baptist minister, rather than warning his congregation about the imminent collapse of the wall between church and state, would more likely speak enthusiastically of the return to our supposedly historical national religious roots, or of the opportunity to return God to public life if we voted properly. The church wants the power that comes with being inside the state. The state wants the validation and commitment that come with being inside the church. Yet neither wants the other to restrict its freedom in any way. So the dance continues, drawing each closer to the other, then pushing each other away. Unitarian Universalists know well the consequences of allowing politics to take root inside church walls. During my decades of being immersed in our tradition, I have noticed the ways in which liberal religion and liberal politics have sometimes become virtually indistinguishable. To be a religious liberal now often takes for granted that one is also politically liberal, that one votes for Democratic Party candidates, that one supports traditional political liberal views on things like reproductive choice and capital punishment and civil rights and healthcare options, though that bright, clear line of traditional liberal views does, interestingly, change when the topic under consideration is economic. Our religious values seem to lead to a direct correspondence with a predictable set of political values. And while you may go to any Unitarian Universalist church and profess to be, along with your Unitarian Universalist position, a Christian, a theist, a humanist, a Buddhist, or a pagan, and you will still receive a warm welcome. If you also speak affirmatively for traditional conservative social values or some traditional, not MAGA, but prior to MAGA, conservative agenda, that warm welcome will likely disappear. I have heard jokes about Republicans, not the Trump variety, but before and outside Trump circles, about Republicans again and again from Unitarian Universalist preachers, jokes that spring from easy assumptions about our homogeneous political views. To carry this line of reasoning to its limit, I could almost say that while it is difficult to characterize Unitarian Universalists theologically, for we might land almost anywhere along the spectrum of theological possibilities, I can much more readily characterize Unitarian Universalists politically, which leads me to a kind of uncomfortable possibility. Are we more a political group than a religious group? Unitarian Universalist minister Davidson Lohr puts it bluntly. He says, Unitarian Universalism is primarily a political identity that accepts a wide variety of individual religious beliefs because the beliefs are peripheral and the politics are central to the identity and goals of the denomination. Members can be Christian, Jewish, atheist, Wiccan, or other because their religious beliefs are irrelevant as long as their political identity is in order. I suppose those who feel passionately about politics might regard the state of affairs Davidson describes as a wonderful development. What could be finer than gathering on Sunday mornings and finding oneself surrounded by folks who share your own political views? Yet I believe any loss of diversity, whether that might be diversity in spiritual views or diversity in social and political views, any loss of diversity is a diminishment of what we claim and hope to be. I believe one should be able to hear a variety of opinions here, to be challenged in one's views spiritually and politically. Though I wonder, when was the last time you heard one of our members enthusiastically voicing a divergent political opinion? When was the last time you heard a Sunday speaker who advanced a more conservative position on an issue? And if you have heard that perspective here, did you really listen and allow your own views to be challenged as opposed to simply tolerating them? Politics, no matter how good they might be, make bad religion. To the extent that we allow ourselves to become a uniform political group, we become restrictive, bound in by topical issues, and prone to regard those who disagree with us, who hold opposing political views, as enemies to be defeated rather than companions to be in dialogue with. Politics also makes bad religion because it encourages regarding people as tokens, as one dimensional creatures characterized by their political identity and voting patterns. The seniors, the angry white males, the black voters, the millennials. Nobody that I know in our congregation can be tidily summed up in terms of a single predictable position. But a single predictable position is exactly the way politics works, for it is the one position that you or I might hold that matters politically. The spiritual view, by contrast, recognizes each of us as complex, multidimensional people capable of unpredictable behaviors and contradictory views. Our 7 principles, any of our statements that define who we are as a spiritual tradition, do not lead automatically to a certain kind of politics. And whenever we assume they do, we have failed to understand both our principles and the people seated around us on Sunday mornings. Traditional spiritual paths have often encouraged a stance toward affairs outside the path as one of being in the world, but not of the world. Engagement without becoming compromised or losing one's objectivity and one's spiritual perspective seems to be the goal of that aphorism. We are to be in the world, not isolated from our surrounding community and its needs, but we are not to be of the world, not to become indistinguishable from any other group, not just one more political party. That stance is a tricky one. It requires continual monitoring of one's involvement to ensure that we maintain a spiritual element, a spiritual vision in whatever it is we choose to participate. Over time, I wonder whether we Unitarian Universalists have too often faltered in monitoring that distinction of being in the world, but not of the world. When we fail to maintain that distinction, we become congregations that can be politically defined with predictable political behaviors. And then we lose the power of bringing a distinctive spiritual perspective to bear on the issues we care about. Like my Baptist minister of long ago who urged us to pray before we voted, I keep hoping that we Unitarian Universalists, in our own way, will pause, reflect, take time to pray, to look deeply at the issues of the day and the voices attached to those issues, not only from our usual political perspective of liberal or conservative, MAGA or socialist, but from a clear spiritual perspective, without being quick to assume that, of course, as liberal, liberally religious people, we will adopt traditionally liberal political positions. Liberal religion and liberal politics are not synonymous, not two sides of a single coin. The challenges that face us as a nation and in our community are complex and contradictory and truly require more than just political solutions, but need thoughtful spiritual wisdom brought to bear on them. Because without that wisdom, the solutions will be just one more version of politics. With that wisdom, we can hope to see solutions emerge that truly result in greater justice and freedom for all. May it be so. Amen.
Our last hymn is Circle Around for Freedom. If you are looking in your book, it's the Gray Hymnal number 155. The melody is the middle line, so don't be fooled. You expect it to be the top, but it's not. Circle Round for Freedom. It's kind of short, so we're going to go through it twice. Normally, when we extinguish the chalice, we have a very short reading. Not the case today. Sorry. I ran into this a couple of weeks ago and it just begged to be shared today. It's called A Brief Theology of the American Flag. And I believe it came from St. Andrew Lutheran Church in Oregon. So here's the short version of it. In 1782, as the Revolutionary War raged on, the Continental Congress established the Great Seal of the United States, and in the process officially spelled out that the new nation's red, white, and blue colors had particular meanings. The colors stood for three virtues, values, ideals. Red, of course, stood for courage, white for purity, or you might say integrity or decency, and blue for justice. Courage, integrity, justice. But hold on, there's more going on here. Remember, this is late 18th century, and these new United States of America were doing something provocative, something never seen before. Their new flag, they declared, would serve as a sign that the nation being born would belong not to a bloodline or a caste, but to the people, and based on ideals the people prized. Nor would the new nation be based on any particular religion. In those days, many flags featured a cross or crosses, but the American flag, no cross at all. It's a striking, conspicuous absence. We should notice it every time we see the flag. Courage, integrity, justice, and no cross, no crescent, no Star of David, no Buddha, no Shiva. Instead, 13 stripes and a constellation of stars representing the community itself, as if to say, this nation shall not be built on any particular state religion, just as it shall not be built on any particular clan, national origin, ethnic bloodline, or royal family. No, on the contrary, this nation will be built on ideals. We will ground ourselves in them as best we can and strive to live them out. And when we fail, we'll get up and strive again and again and again. Courage, integrity, justice. Perhaps that's why we put our flags up on poles, to call to mind our highest ideals and remind us to reach for them. 2.5 centuries ago, the American flag was a glimpse of a new kind of community. And today, at our best, that community is still what we stand for. It's still the republic for which we stand. Reverend Kathy has the benediction.
It was good to be with you this morning, even if I was with you virtually. I hope you enjoy the rest of this holiday weekend and move on into July in good spirits. The words of the benediction are by Mother Teresa. Love cannot remain by itself. It has no meaning. Love must be put into action, and that action is service. So whether you be rich or poor, liberal or conservative, able or disabled, it is not how much you do, but how much love you put into the doing. Shalom, salam, blessed be. Amen.
Please stay seated for the postlude, An American Tribute, or tribute to our land by Woody Guthrie. Thank you for coming. Please join in the back for refreshments and conversation, followed by second hour.